I took a house-sitting job last winter that I still won't talk about to anyone in my real life. I'm only writing it down because I can't sleep, and some part of me hopes putting it into words will pull it out of my head. It started with a post on a small-town Facebook group my cousin sent me. Easy house sitting, it said. 4 nights, feed a cat, $600 cash. The place was on Old Briar Road, a narrow county lane that split off from the highway and disappeared behind skeletal trees and pasture fences. I called the number. A man answered after a single ring. His voice was soft and papery, like he was whispering under a blanket. He gave me the basics. The cat's name was Cricket. The heat sometimes clicked too loud at night, and the barn lights were on a timer I shouldn't mess with. Then he added a list of things I wrote down because the way he said them made them feel more like rules. Check the trail cams once at dusk and once at dawn. Don't use the upstairs bathroom. It's out of order. Lock the mudroom door before dark. If someone knocks after midnight, don't answer. If the landline rings more than once, unplug it. The last 2 felt like they belonged in a story someone made up for laughs. I even asked, "Is that a joke?" He said, "No," and then thanked me for helping, like he was in a hurry to get off the phone. The house was older than I expected. A long, single-story farmhouse with weathered siding and a pitched roof that looked like it needed new shingles last decade. A wide porch ran along the front. To the right, a thin strip of woods led down to a creek. Across the gravel driveway sat a gray barn with a metal roof and a floodlight above the sliding doors. Past that, half a mile of empty pasture. I arrived just before sunset. The air had that brittle cold that makes your breath feel sharp. I let myself in with the key under the porch frog, met Cricket, a skittish calico who only tolerated me because I opened a can, and did a slow lap. The place smelled like lemon cleaner and stale paper. In the living room, a big picture window looked straight across the yard at the barn. A grainy flat screen sat on a cabinet with a bunch of labeled remotes. On the hallway wall, above a console table, was a mounted landline phone. The cord was cracked and yellow the way plastic gets in old houses. There were 3 bedrooms. I chose the one near the kitchen because it felt least like I was borrowing someone's actual life. The bed was bare except for a comforter, and the closet was empty. The upstairs bathroom door was shut and had blue painter's tape across the knob. Don't use upstairs bathroom, I reminded myself. Easy enough. Back by the mudroom, a corkboard held 4 small trail cam monitors with their times blinking. Each showed a different angle. The porch steps, the front yard facing the barn, the back fence by the woods, and the driveway. They were color during the day, and I guess they swapped to black and white in low light, because as I watched, the one trained on the back fence flickered, then the scene turned grainy and silver. I set my phone alarm for dawn and for dusk, like the man said, and fed the cat. Night came fast out there. No street lights, no neighboring windows, just a heavy dark pressing against the house. I locked the mudroom door, clicked off the kitchen light, and carried a plate of food to the living room. I watched an old movie. The heat thumped and clicked. Cricket skulked around on silent pause. For a while, it was almost boring. A little after 11, the landline rang. It startled me so bad I dropped the remote. The tone was higher than modern phones, a thin, tinny trilling that sounded like it belonged in a motel from the 70s. I stared at the receiver on the wall and didn't move. It rang again, then a third time. Rule 5 slid through my head. If the landline rings more than once, unplug it. I crossed the room and lifted the receiver just enough to peek at the jack. The cord disappeared into the wall. There was no plug to pull. I hesitated, then took the whole base off its hook and set it on the console table face down. It rang again, somehow even louder with the speaker pressed to the wood. Cricket bolted into the kitchen. By the 5th ring, I had this awful, irrational feeling it was going to wake something up, like the noise itself was a key. I pulled the cord as hard as I could. The brittle sheath cracked in my hand, and the line went dead. I stood there with the broken cord looped around my wrist and thought about calling the owner, but it was late, and the weirdness of dialing him to say, "Your haunted phone rang," made me feel ridiculous. I told myself it was probably some glitch. Old wires, who knows. I went to bed with a flashlight under my pillow, because I'm not as brave as I like to think I am. Sometime after 2, I woke up sweating. The house was quiet but too warm, the ducks clanking like someone crawled through them with a handful of pennies. I got a glass of water and wandered to the living room, where the picture window framed the barn in a square of black. The floodlight above the doors popped on. It was motion sensitive. The owner had mentioned deer. I squinted for antlers in the wash of light. Nothing moved. The floodlight buzzed. It cut off after 30 seconds, then popped back on. It took me a second to realize what was wrong. The sliding barn doors were open 3 or 4 inches, just enough to show a seam of darker black. They hadn't been open earlier. I would have noticed. The floodlight clicked off again. I waited. It clicked on, washed the yard in white, clicked off, on, off. As if something just inside that seam was making tiny movements where I couldn't see them. I went to the mudroom monitors. The front yard cam showed the barn in black and white. The floodlight strobed at steady intervals, but the frame never changed. No deer, no person, no swaying branches. The only thing that moved was the time in the corner, advancing with each strobe like a heartbeat. I told myself it was a bad sensor and forced myself back to bed. I slept off and on and woke for good when my dawn alarm buzzed. Coffee, cat food, trail cams. The porch cam had captured a raccoon sniffing the steps at 1:13 in the morning. Nothing on the driveway. The back fence showed a fox slipping through the brush at 4:02. The front yard cam. Nothing. No barn doors because it was angled a little close, but no light strobing either, which made sense because it was daylight. I put the monitors back and tried to convince myself I'd imagined the doors being open at all. Part 2 will be dropping in 3 days. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.